Good morning and welcome to River City Church. I am so excited that you are here with us today. Today is Mother's Day, and we just want to say Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. And today we also want to acknowledge that Mother's Day can be very difficult for some people. And it comes with a whole range of emotions. Some of us are feeling joy, and others of us are feeling grief, or some other emotion in between. And wherever you are with this, and whether you celebrate today or you don't, we are glad you are with us. And here at River City Church, we just want to take today to honor all of the women in our community. We are so grateful for you. You are a treasure and a gift from God for us, and we are so glad that you are part of River City Church. We are
Glorious, how beautiful you are.
message, I was struck by the stories of so many women in Scripture. Stories that we have heard from flannel graphs as children to sermons as adults. The part of their stories that I kept seeing was whatever the circumstances, however their life played out, and often at great cost to themselves, these women took hold of the opportunity presented before them to serve the purposes of God. And today I want to challenge us that God gives all of us an opportunity to serve. And the opportunity to serve God's divine purposes often comes at great cost and in times of great difficulty. In the book of Joshua chapter 2, we find the children of Israel have entered the promised land. They've already begun the conquest to take the land that God has promised them, and they have arrived at Jericho. Now, for those of you familiar with the story, Jericho was a city that had enormous walls, it was an impenetrable fortress, and it was intimidating to anyone who sought to overtake it. And in chapter 2 of Joshua, we find something exciting happening. Joshua chapter 2, beginning with verse 1. Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies from the acacia grove, saying, "Go and scout the land, especially Jericho." So they left and they came to the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. The king of Jericho was told, "Look, some of the Israelite men have come here tonight to investigate the land." Then the king of Jericho sent word to Rahab and said, "Bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, for they came to investigate the entire land." But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. So she said, "Yes, men did come here, but I didn't know where they were from. At nightfall, when the city gate was about to close, the men went out, and I don't know where they were going. Chase after them quickly, and you can catch up with them." But she had taken them up to her roof and hidden them among the stalks of flax that she had arranged on the roof. The men pursued them along the road to the fords of the Jordan, and as soon as they left to pursue them, the city gate was shut. Before the men fell asleep, she went up to the roof and said to them, "I know the Lord has given you this land, and that the terror of you has fallen on us, and everyone who lives in the land is panicking because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you went and came out of Egypt, and what you did in Sihon and Og, the 2 Amorite kings you completely destroyed across the Jordan. When we heard this, we lost heart, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and earth below. Now please swear to me by the Lord that you will also show kindness to my father's family, because I show kindness to you. Give me sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father, mother, brothers, sisters, and all who belong to them, and save us from death." The men answered her, "We will give our lives for yours. If you don't report our mission, we will show kindness and faithfulness to you when the Lord gives us the land." So the spies had gone into Jericho, and they encountered this woman Rahab, who was a prostitute, and she took them and she hid them and she protected them. And the story goes on to tell us that the men returned to Joshua and the people of Israel. They began to prepare and to do what they needed to do to take the city according to what God had commanded. It's an exciting story. I encourage you to read it. And it tells us that in Joshua 6, chapter 17, when they went to do their final assault, that Joshua commands that everyone be destroyed except for Rahab and her family. So all the way up to the leader of the people, they honored their promise to her. And going on in verses 22 through 27, we hear the story about how Jericho was besieged and the battle ensued, and how Rahab and her family were rescued. How Rahab had been told to leave a red cord where they could find her in all of the chaos. And if you think about a city being besieged, imagine looking for a red rope in all of the blood and all of the screams and all of the chaos. They found that red rope, and they rescued her and her family. And she went on to live with the people of Israel. She fully embraced the faith that they had and became one of their community. And in Matthew chapter 1, verse 5, we read in the genealogy of Jesus that Salmon fathered Boaz by Rahab. Boaz fathered Obed by Ruth, and Obed fathered Jesse, and Jesse fathered King David. So Rahab went on to marry a man named Salmon, and her son was Boaz that we read about in the book of Ruth, that became the kinsman redeemer, and her life and her children and her legacy became part of the genealogy of Christ. And when faced with unimaginable circumstances, Rahab put her life and the life of her family at risk to hide the spies because she heard of what God had done. Her life as a prostitute was a hopeless one, and she put her hope in God and his people to save her. This led her on a path not of destruction, but of absolute destiny. How we respond when facing hardship and our willingness to take risks when God is in them is the opportunity we may be presented in our lives. Though it may seem impossible, when God is in it, our lives and the lives of generations may be impacted by our choices. The opportunity to serve God's divine purposes may not look the way that our culture accepts. In Judges chapter 4, we are introduced to Deborah. She was a prophetess that had been appointed and anointed by God to be judge of Israel. She was the leader of Israel. And the chapter goes on to tell us that she calls a man named Barak to see her and reminds him of what God has called him to do. Verses 6 through 8. She summoned Barak, son of Abinim, from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, "Hasn't the Lord, the God of Israel, commanded you? Go deploy the troops on Mount Tabor and take with you 10,000 men from the Naphtalites and the Zebulunites. Then I will lure Sisera, commander of Jabin's army, his chariots, his infantry, at the Wadi Kishon to fight against you, and I will hand him over to you." Barak said to her, "If you go with me, I will go, but if you will not go with me, I will not go." Now, this army had been causing all kinds of problems for the people of Israel. People had suffered and they had died at the hand of this army that they were going to go against. And these chariots were just wreaking havoc on the community. And so God had called and asked Barak to go deal with them so that they would protect the people of Israel as God had promised he would. And he had been resistant to do it. And so Deborah calls him and she reminds him of what he's supposed to do. And women didn't generally go to war in Israel. This was out of the norm for Deborah to be riding along. She wasn't going to fight, but went in the way of representing God going with the people. Barak was concerned, it seems, and wanted to be sure of victory. And the story goes on to tell us in verses 12 through 16 that God threw Sisera and his charioteers into a panic before Barak even got there. And Sisera fled while his men were then being assaulted and killed by the thousands and thousands that Barak had led against them. And as the story goes on, after all of this has happened, meanwhile Sisera, who is the leader of the opposing army, had fled on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber, the Kenite, because there was peace between King Jabin of Hazor and the family of Heber, the Kenite. Jael went out to greet Sisera and said to him, "Come in, my lord, come in with me, don't be afraid." So he went into her tent, and she covered him with a blanket. He said to her, "Please give me a little water to drink, for I am thirsty." She opened a container of milk, gave him a drink, and covered him again. Then he said to her, "Stand at the entrance to the tent. If a man comes and asks you, 'Is there a man here?' say no." While he was sleeping from exhaustion, Heber's wife Jael took a tent peg, grabbed a hammer, and went silently to Sisera. She hammered the peg into his temple and drove it into the ground, where he died. When Barak arrived in pursuit of Sisera, Jael went out to greet him and said to him, "Come in and I will show you the man you were looking for." So he went in with her, and there was Sisera lying dead with a tent peg through his temple. And so we have this twist in the story that happens, where Sisera, upon seeing his army being decimated, he flees to a place that he believes is a place of safety. And when presented with the opportunity to take him in, Jael took him in, and she took care of him. He wanted water, and she gave him milk, which was a nicer thing to do. She tucked him in nicely to sleep. And while he was sleeping, rather than protect him, she assassinated him. Now, what in the world does this story have to do with us today? So we see that Jael slaying Sisera, this was anything but what women did in this culture. Riding into battle and assassinating the leader of an enemy's army were not what the daughters of Israel were raised to do, nor am I advocating violence today. I am not saying that God is calling you to be an assassin. In the story, we see two women who embrace the opportunity in their way to fulfill God's purposes by stepping outside the cultural views of what women do. Oftentimes, the opportunities to serve God's divine purposes are undignified and outside of what's acceptable and involved getting our hands dirty. We may not be asked to go to war, but we may be given an opportunity to forsake the American dream, for example. Our culture has very clear idea of what success and happiness looks like wherever you live. For most people, it's, finding a good job and a family and establishing roots in a life and enjoying vacations and times together. And when we follow God outside of those norms, outside of the picket fence, so to speak, people often wonder and question and are challenged by how we choose to live, and even oftentimes by the people God may call us to love the unlovable, the ones that are undesirable, the people that others may turn away from or be appalled by, that we may be called to embrace the hard work of an abnormal life, fully surrendered to the purposes of God. Just as these women took this opportunity to do what they needed to do, even though it was not the norm, even though there may have been stigma attached to it, even though people may have been appalled at their decisions, they did what they did, and it was in line with the purposes of God. And for us, we are asked to do the same thing at times, to embrace the abnormal, which in God's kingdom is often perfectly normal, because it's about fulfilling His design and about reaching those He wants to reach. The opportunity to serve God's purposes often uses the gifts and talents that we have been given. Acts chapter 9, verses 36 through 42 introduce us to a woman named Tabitha, or some of you may know as Dorcas. In Joppa, there was a disciple named Tabitha, which is translated Dorcas. She was always doing good works and acts of charity. About this time, she became sick and died. After washing her, they placed her in a room upstairs. Since Lydda was near Joppa, the disciples heard that Peter was there and sent 2 men to him, who urged him, "Don't delay in coming with us." Peter got up and went with them when he arrived. They led him to the room upstairs, and all the widows approached him weeping and showing him the robes and clothes that Dorcas had made while she was with them. Peter sent them all out of the room. He knelt down, prayed, and turning toward the body said, "Tabitha, get up." She opened her eyes, saw Peter, and sat up. He gave her his hand and helped her stand up. He called the saints and widows and presented her alive. This became known throughout Joppa, and many believed in the Lord. Peter stayed for some time in Joppa with Simon the tanner after this. So we have the story here of Tabitha. And what I love about this story is, many of us know it because of the miracle that happened, that this woman that everyone loved, she died. And then Peter came and prayed, and she came back to life. And the thing about it is that her life and her influence, and the reason so many came to hear her story and believe in the Lord, is because before she died, she was serving others, she was loving others, and she was using the gifts and talents God had given her to bless others. She was making clothes for those in need. A very simple, practical thing that she did that impacted so many lives, so that when this miraculous thing happened in her life, people took notice. And more were impacted because of who she was before it happened. It's not often the most visible or notable that have the opportunity to change lives, but the small and simple acts done by ordinary people, like donating clothes or food. The seemingly simplest things can make the biggest impact when we surrender them to God. Today, I want to challenge you that whatever opportunity God has presented or will present, that we listen to the Spirit's leading, and even if it's costly, we choose to obey and step into God's divine purposes. In closing, I have 3 questions for you. Number 1, what opportunities to serve have you embraced? What things have you done that you know God has led you to? And number 2, what might stop you from saying yes to God if an opportunity presents? What excuses might we make not to do and to follow and to do what God is asking us? And number 3, what gifts has God given you that He may have a greater plan for? Something simple that you do or you love. Take time to pray about. God has given you this gift, this passion. How can you use it to glorify Him and serve His kingdom? And lastly, who has impacted your life with simple acts that you can thank God for today? Or maybe thank them for. Maybe you haven't told them how grateful you are for the things that they have done for you. Take time to thank God and to thank them for their impact on your life.
There's nothing but more that will ever come close. Nothing can compare. Lord, I live and hope. Your presence, I've tasted and seen for the sweetest of loves. When my heart becomes free and my shame is undone. Your presence, Lord. We're singing, Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for. To be overcome by your presence, Lord. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for. To be overcome by your presence, Lord. Your presence, let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for. To be overcome by your presence, Lord. Your presence, Lord.
We just want to thank you so much for your faithful generosity. Because of your giving, River City Church is continuing to support the ministries and missionaries that we partner with. If you would like to partner with us, you can do that by clicking the link in the description of this video. Also by texting the number and downloading the app that will be displayed on the screen. And also by mailing a check to River City Church, 21 Pawnee Street, Watertown, Wisconsin, 53094. Because of your faithful generosity, we have been able to continue to faithfully support everything that we partner with during this pandemic, and we cannot thank you enough for your faithfulness. I just want to thank you so much for joining us today. We are so glad that you could worship with us from wherever you are. May you go in God's peace to love and serve one another, and may you pursue every opportunity that God presents to fulfill His purposes in your life and to impact those around you. Thank you.